Hey guys, Keys here back with another Bitcoin video. So the ETF did get approved. It got approved on the 10th, which was this purple line right here. And you can actually see the day after it got approved, we went up to 49K, dumped down around 15% to 41.5, and now we're currently hovering at around 42.7. So I guess it was kind of the sell the news. So what we were saying was like we're probably going to rally into the ETF, and then when the ETF drops, we're probably going to get a sell off, right? Because that's what historically happened. We talked about it. I tweeted out about it December 11th, and we've been talking about it for kind of a while, even before I tweeted this out. That we usually see a dump after these like huge news events. And you saw, this was 2017. We dumped around, in 4 days, we dumped 46%. And then in 2021, in 11 days, we dropped 27%. So far, it's only been 4 days, and we dropped around 15%. Is that enough? I think it could be enough. Um, and is this a real like sell the news event? I don't really know for sure because this is like my first time like actually following the news the entire way from like the beginning of it. So I guess I kind of need a couple more days to like really see which way it goes, but I think that there is a chance that this is enough of a sell off for a few reasons. One being like even though like so okay, we know like a huge dump is gonna come eventually. We don't know when, right? Like I think a lot of people are saying actually a lot of people right now are saying it's gonna happen right now. That's one reason why I think like it might not happen yet because I've never seen so many people like so certain that we're coming down to the 30s. But also like the ETF, the only reason why I thought the ETF news would be a sell the news event isn't because like after this event like there's no more like use case for Bitcoin or whatever, like there's no narrative left. Like there's so much narrative still. The only reason why I thought a sell off was gonna come was because I don't think institutions like people with real money like millions and billions of dollars they're not gonna buy it at 40 some K only for Bitcoin to crash down to like 30 eventually. Because I do think 30K is like 32K. Like this box, I think will get touched again. That's why we still have it highlighted. So I think eventually we'll come back down to it. I don't know when, but it's not like I thought that the ETF itself, like the narrative after that's done, like there's nothing left for Bitcoin that like we're just gonna get a sell off. I just only think that we're gonna get a sell off because major like really rich people know how to play the markets and they can manipulate the markets to the point where they're only gonna buy it after Bitcoin gets a huge dump and scares out a lot of people. So that doesn't mean it has to happen now. Um, and so I think one of the biggest things for me is actually this trend line that Bitcoin's been holding since we broke up in October. So this was when we broke out at the 32K range. This range, by the way, guys, that we were in for like 200 some days, like it was over 200 days. It was like 225 or something. This whole consolidation period led to this breakout move, right? And so this move, in my opinion, is still all just one big move. It's still the breakout of the 32K range. And you can see the line that we've been holding, that this move has just been like grinding on, right? We grinded it for like a month down here. We were kind of touching it a lot. Then we kind of got a huge breakout to the upside. Kind of went, I mean, this is kind of volatile swings, but basically sideways until like the ETF. Then we just crashed down, and all we really did was crash down to the line again that we've been holding. And until this line breaks and it like we're definitely like not in this grinding this trend anymore, I don't see any reason to fade this line and kind of go against it. If you did, if you were like already looking at this line, because I still remember in November, like everyone was talking about this ascending triangle, right? You can kind of see how it's a triangle. And the bottom of it is this line, right? Every time you hit this line back then, you if you took a long at it, it was the correct play, right? Because every single time we basically bounced off of it eventually, and then eventually like ended up breaking up even higher. And all we've done so far is just hit it a couple times since then, right? When we got up to like the 40 some K in December, we wicked down to it once, like a week ago. we wicked down to it when we got the huge sell-off a few days ago, and then we kind of closed at it yesterday. And today we're bouncing off of it. I don't know for sure if it's going to hold, like constantly hold. Like we've hit it like a bunch of times now, at least 6 times. But until it breaks, I think that this line is pretty important, and it's the trend that Bitcoin's in. Like Bitcoin is in this trend, this line. This is like the trend line that Bitcoin is in. That's like the slope of it. And yeah, I just think that for me, I need to see this line break to prove that we're finally breaking out of, like, we're done. Like this was like the ETF news line, right? That we've been holding because that's when we started it. So I don't think we're done until this is done. And we're not done with it yet. It could happen like today, tomorrow, like sometime this week that we do break it, but until I really see us breaking down from this trend line, I think we're okay. And I think that goes against a lot of what people are saying. 'Cause, like I said, I feel like everyone now is like saying we're going to the 30s. I think like I've been hearing like 38K, 36, 35. No one really is saying like 32 or 29 or 28 or anything, but people are saying like around this area, like maybe this top area that we took forever to break out of, and we actually haven't back tested it since. So maybe 38K. If we do break down, I think 38K would be one area you could probably take a long and at least in the short term, probably get like a bounce on. But I actually don't think we're going down yet. I think that there's still time. The S&P is, look where the S&P is. Like, this is the all-time high. This pink line on the top that we hit in 2021. In January of 2022. So it actually almost exactly 2 years ago, slightly more than 2 years ago, we were at it. And I actually think like the S&P can do something crazy where it actually puts in a higher high, so it breaks this high, like goes above the high of January 2022. I don't know for how long, but like it goes above it, and then we come back down, and like that's when the crash really happens. And the reason why I think that would be so interesting is because that's what Bitcoin did in 2021, right? It put in a high, then it came back to it, took it out the high, went higher, and then we got the huge bear market, right? And I think that'd just be so interesting if the S&P did the same thing, just on like just like taking a bit longer, because Bitcoin did that all within a year, right? Like this is only 1 year. This is like a couple of months. This was April of 2021, then we took it out in November of 2021. For the S&P, it'd be like January 2022, and then taking it out in like January or February of 2024, which is like 2 years. And then like going into like the rate cuts, this line right here is like when the rate cuts are supposed to happen. Going into interest rate cuts, then we start seeing the markets tank for a couple months, only to like recover up, like kind of like a V-shaped recovery, kind of like a COVID, like kind of like one of these recoveries, right? It's like a V-shape. So only to get a V-shaped recovery, and I think that actually could play out. And if it did, it would just be so interesting because it would kind of look like Bitcoin's chart slightly, like not exactly, but like just the fact that we put in a higher high, and then we got a huge bear market, which is what Bitcoin did in 2021 to 2022. So if we don't dump right now, because you got to realize like if the S&P is like so going strong, I don't think there's any reason why Bitcoin has to dump just yet. So I think that also goes to reinforce the fact that I think we could still be going up, at least like grinding up. It might even be like a super slow grind. Like low-key, this took forever, right? That was kind of like a month, more than a month. That was like a month, like 5 weeks. But if we did that pattern again, I mean, I think everyone would be okay with Bitcoin just doing something like this, right? Like if we just like slowly grind it, and even if we didn't even take out, all we did was like come straight back up to like 49K. We just grinded for a while, and then we started like tanking, come back down to like 32 here, and then V-shaped recovery. Because the halving, because you gotta realize like this purple line, this middle one is interest rate cuts, and then this second one is the halving. So I think that there is a good chance that we dump before the halving. We already spoke about this in my last Bitcoin video. We can dump before the halving, and then we can pump after the halving. because that's typically what Bitcoin does. So yeah, guys, that's really what I think about Bitcoin and the ETF news and everything after, letting the dust settle down slightly. I mean, we might still get super volatile this week. I don't really know, but I actually think we could somehow just grind up because like Bitcoin just does these weird things like this where it just like does things that like sometimes you're just like how, but then you're like, oh, it's just Bitcoin. It's just doing what Bitcoin does. So I think Bitcoin can just continue doing what Bitcoin does, even though everyone's starting to fade it now. I think a lot of people are starting to fade Bitcoin. And I do think a crash is coming. And when the crash comes, guys, you got to realize like that's going to be the crash. Like if we do come back down to like 32K, maybe even like come into like 27, 28, like really scare people. Like I'm talking like a crash because like if we came back up to around like 49K one more time, only to fade back down like to this box to around 30K, that's a 38% drop. If we went to 28K, that's a 44% drop. I think like a lot of people would start being really scared about Bitcoin, especially like after the fact that the ETF is out and everything. But that's gonna be the level that all the institutions who like filed for this ETF, because they need to have Bitcoin. They literally need to buy Bitcoin. Those institutions that supposedly got all approved, they're going to be buying it when the markets tank and everyone is like super scared. In this area, in my opinion, is where they're going to be buying. So we don't have to go to it right now, but I do think eventually we will go to it. So yeah, guys, that's what I think. So to summarize it, I think that there's a chance that Bitcoin just holds this trend line, the October ETF news trend line, and until we break from it, which could actually be pretty soon, because I don't know if we're gonna hold it here. Like maybe tomorrow we just come all the way back down and we close below it and then like we start tanking again. But until we do something like that, I'm just gonna say that Bitcoin's just continuing what it's been doing for the past like 2 months, 3 months. And I do think a huge dump is coming, and whenever that happens, which I think could be like end of Q1, basically when the S&P starts tanking really hard, whenever that is, which so far looks like March or April, then I think we're going to get a huge dump. And then when we do get that huge dump and everyone's panicking, that is when it's time to like full on like start actually like buying because I don't really think when we do start coming down, we're not going to go down forever. We're just not. Like Bitcoin's not going to do that. And we have to like be prepared with the levels and just hold on to our conviction, because like we could buy it, let's say like we buy it like 30K, but then Bitcoin comes all the way down to like 25K. Like you do not want to sell your 30K position just because it went to 25 only for us to like bounce all the way back up to 40, right? So yeah, guys, that's Bitcoin update. We'll see how it plays out. I'm just gonna give it a lot of days, so I'm not gonna really make Bitcoin videos like super often because I just want to give it some time. Like I feel like if you make a Bitcoin video like every day, like Bitcoin is just so, it can just do such random crazy things that like it doesn't. I feel like you need like kind of a longer gap between just to like really see things play out. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.